2011, after being sentenced to 5 years in prison for sending her son to a public school in a district in which they did not live, Tanya McDowell asked, who would have thought that wanting a good education for my son would have put me in this predicament? To be clear, they did not live in any one place as they were homeless, but they were originally from Bridgeport, Connecticut, over there, and her son attended school in Norwalk, Connecticut, there, about 30 or so minutes away. Notice though how she says a good education as if there's a difference between an education from Bridgeport and its neighboring city, Norwalk. And she's absolutely right. Hello, I'm Daniela Ambrister, and I grew up in the Bridgeport public school education system, and I'm here today to talk to you about the education disparity in America. I know it sounds odd that the quality of K-12 education varies over city lines, but this is entirely what is happening all over America, not just Connecticut. While there are many factors that go into this, I will be mainly talking about school funding, private schools, and standardized testing, and how these things vastly disadvantage communities and families that are not wealthy. The U.S. education system disadvantages some people and advantages others, further perpetuating the cycle of inequalities. Bottom line, this is happening because of money, or better yet, lack thereof. As you probably guessed, cities with subpar education are the less affluent than their counterparts. Public schools are mainly funded on a local level, so local property taxes contribute to 55.3% of school fundings. Thus, schools in wealthier communities with more expensive property tax have more money for school funding to provide books, supplies, technologies, extracurricular activities, and even better teachers. Whereas in some schools, supplies like paper are strictly rationed. Having funds to provide a high quality of education will guarantee better outcomes for students, and this is proven. The National Bureau of Economic Research stated that a 20% increase in per pupil spending a year for poor children can lead to an additional year of completed education, a 25% higher earnings, and a 20% point reduction in incidence of poverty in adulthood. More specifically, according to the State Department of Education, Greenwich spends $6,000 more per pupil than Bridgeport does. So why is a good quality education only exclusive to the rich and wealthy? Growing up, I thought that everyone had really old textbooks and limited classroom libraries with one wonky computer lab and classrooms with 28 kids minimum. Little did I know schools 5 minutes away from mine, but in Fairfield, Connecticut, had tablets, state-of-the-art computers, and actual working computers in those labs, and classrooms were capped at 20. I thought this was normal, that half of my classmates still read books that we read for 2 years now. I just thought maybe they really liked Judy Moody. Come to find out, and it was testified that in a trial over school funding inequities in Connecticut, that 5th graders in Bridgeport often read at a kindergarten level. In high school, I thought I was so lucky to have a wealthy aunt that pitied us enough to pay for our tuition at a private school in Fairfield, just a town over. Luckily, of course, they really wanted more black kids, so it was even a little discounted. Anyways, I would crack jokes with my friends. They would say, I had really ugly plaid skirts I had to wear to school, but at least my ceilings weren't dropping and crumbling because of years of water damage and lack of maintenance like theirs did. I would go back and forth on how my school was so preppy, but at least, but I could hit them back with, yeah, but my school has this or my school has that, referring to things that my private school could afford to give us, and the public school just could not. And I'd win almost every time. When they would bring up that I must not have any people of color for friends, I would always be able to refute that because in my small college prep classes, there were mainly people of color. I didn't think much of it then, but looking back now, the honors and high honors classes had very few kids of color, even for a predominantly white school. Looking back now, I realize that this was probably due to a system of tracking my school did, in which Bridgeport public middle schools were put into college prep classes, and kids from private middle schools in Bridgeport were put into honors courses, and there was no one from a Bridgeport public or middle school that was put into high honors classes. Did you notice how of course this was freshman year, and we had 3 more years to go to prove we were worthy of high honors and honors courses, but did you notice how they put us at a disadvantage from the jump? On the other hand, I'll admit high school was pretty easy. No surprise there, because if not, parents would gladly take their kids out and the school would lose money. The real surprise was that was going into college and realizing that I'm not as smart as I thought I was. Of course, I didn't anticipate this, and my immigrant parents knew very little about what exactly makes a good school, but the word private was a good guess. I don't blame them for doing what they thought was best, and in this case, the best option was private school since it was promised such great outcomes. However, in a recent research shows that private schools have greater outcomes mainly because of the socioeconomic class that those families are in the first place. Once the differences in socioeconomic class disappear, so do the differences in public and private school outcomes. In her article, Annie states, "It is the ability to afford private school that makes the difference, not the private school itself. Since private schools attendees tend to come from wealthier families, they generally have better outcomes. Additionally, private schools pose a problem, especially in communities like mine, where parents rush to put their kids in private school because they're better instead of pressuring public schools to get better. Public schools are poor students' only options, and states know this and don't do a thing to make their only option a great option. I should have known my private school education wasn't worth the money when I did horribly on the SAT. However, like the rest of my classmates, since I was able to afford to go to that school, I was able to afford a personal SAT tutor. Being able to do this put me at an incredibly large advantage than those I went to middle school with. My tutor in virtually every other SAT prep option was extremely expensive. Wealthy families are the main population of students, or high school students, who benefited from this option, leaving poor students to fend for themselves. This is not a theory or speculation, as the College Board's own SAT profile report data over the recent years show that students with family incomes over $200,000 a year on average scored above 1,700, while students with family incomes less than $20,000 a year on average scored below 13,000. Not to mention, wealthier students have the funds to pay the $50 to take the SAT and then retake and retake as many times as they like, while poor students are restricted to the 2 or 3 times that their school will give it to them for free, if they even give it to them for free. Now, was it worth it? I don't know. Yes, I grew up in the Bridgeport public school education system, but I was able to pay my way into a school that looked better on paper. I did not have state-of-the-art technology, I did have state-of-the-art technology and heating at my school, but I wouldn't say it was worth it. Not when I was basically paying for A's and had no challenge, and not when I turned my back on public school, on a public school who needed parents and students to demand more. I can't help but think about how much money I paid to go to a private school and how much that money could have helped my local public school, not just for my class, but years to come after. Thank you for watching.